Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're jumping right in for a global deep dive on one of the most intense academic journeys you can take, the PhD. We're going to look at what it's like in India, Europe, and the US, what drives people to start, what challenges they face, and, what's waiting for them on the other side.
All right, let's just cut to the chase with the question on everyone's mind. Is a PhD actually worth it? Is it this golden ticket to a great career? Or is it just a super demanding, maybe even overrated hustle? It's a huge question, and today we're going to try to unpack it.
So first things first, why would anyone even sign up for this marathon? Well, what's really fascinating is that the why completely changes depending on where in the world you are. Let's start in India. A pretty big study of over 1,200 scholars found that for nearly half of them, it's all about a pure, simple passion for research. That's the number one driver. But that's not the full story. For almost a quarter of them, things like societal pressure and family expectations are a huge factor, which, adds a whole other layer to it.
Now, compare that to the US. Over there, it's often a mix of that same personal interest, but also a very practical view of the degree's high utility, what it can actually do for your career. And then you have cutting-edge fields in Europe, like AI, where the motivation is super specific. It's all about tackling these brand new complex challenges, like making research reproducible and figuring out the ethics of it all.
But here's the thing. No matter what gets you started, every single student eventually comes face to face with the reality of the journey. So let's try and pull apart some of the common myths from the grinding truth of what it's really like.
Okay, you've probably heard this one before, or at least a version of it. It's this pretty cynical idea that PhD students are just cogs in a machine, cheap labor to get research done. But is that really what's going on?
Well, the reality is, of course, a lot more complicated. Calling it glorified labor totally misses that this is a high-utility degree. But, and this is a big but, that value comes at a really high personal cost. It's an emotional and financial grind. And it's not some single, uniform path. It's a journey that's deeply personal, driven by very specific, niche goals. And speaking of those high personal costs, they add up to what you could call a global gauntlet. It's this set of challenges that pretty much every doctoral student, no matter their field or where they live, has to run through.
Let's just start with a number that is honestly pretty shocking. Graduate students are 6 times more likely to experience depression or anxiety than the general population. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. 6 times. That points to a massive systemic problem in higher education all over the world. And a huge piece of that puzzle is something called impostor syndrome. You know that feeling? It's that nagging voice in your head that says you don't actually belong here, that you're a total fraud, and any second now everyone's going to figure it out. And if you think you're the only one feeling that, you are so wrong. A study of psych doctoral students found that a staggering 88% of them felt this way. So the big takeaway here is, if you have ever felt like an imposter, well, you're in the vast, vast majority. You're not alone. And it's not just in your head, right? There are these really practical hurdles too. Back in India, scholars said their top 3 challenges were, 1, just trying to find some kind of work-life balance, 2, the constant financial pressure, and 3, feeling like they just weren't getting enough support from their institutions. These are real-world problems that just pile on top of the mental strain. Okay, so you managed to get through all of that, then what? What's the actual payoff at the end of the day? Let's talk about what a PhD is worth now in a world that's being completely reshaped by things like AI and a job market that's always changing. When you look at where people want to go with their PhDs, it gets really interesting. In India, the dream is still very much focused on traditional paths, academia or a government job. But in the US, there is huge demand and value for PhDs in private industry, a sector that, get this, only 9% of scholars in India are even aiming for. That's a massive difference. And because of all this, the very idea of what a PhD holder is, well, that's evolving too. It's not just about being the traditional researcher anymore. The PhD of today is more of an interdisciplinary problem solver. And looking forward, they're becoming AI-savvy leaders who really get the ethical side of new technologies. That skill set is getting way broader. Wow, okay. We've covered a lot of ground here, from motivations and myths to the really tough challenges and what the future looks like. So after this whirlwind tour around the world, what's the ultimate takeaway? So if we really boil it down to the essentials, here's what we've seen. First, passion is what gets people started, but that passion gets tested by some very real, very global pressures. Second, that mental health gauntlet, feeling like an imposter, that's a universal struggle. And finally, the finish line itself is changing. The value of a PhD is growing way beyond the university walls. And that brings me to a final thought I want to leave with you. Whether you're deep in a PhD, just thinking about one, or it's a distant memory, what is your single biggest motivator that pushes you forward? Or, on the flip side, what's your biggest fear that holds you back? It's definitely something worth thinking about.